Hey everyone! Thank you so much to everyone who submitted questions to the AMA. I'm going to record some answers now, and hopefully they will delight you. So first up, Annie asked me, Latona's childlessness is mentioned several times throughout From Unseen Fire. Does she really want to be a mother, or does she want a child so she can be seen fulfilling her societal duty? Wow, what a great question, because there is just so much to unpack in that, right? Like, I think that's even something that is hard to unpack in the modern age for women all the time. Like, do I actually want kids? Do I just think I want kids because capitalism tells me I do and marketing tells me I want to do, or my parents tell me I do? Like, that's so much to unpack for so many people. For Latona, my broad answer is yes, she wants children because she wants them. But I think it's very complicated for her right now. Separating out, like, how much does she want them for the sake of being maternal and how much does she want them because she feels like she has a duty to pass on, her magic if she can. It's not directly hereditary, but it does run in families, so there's a pretty good chance that she would have at least one magical child to be able to pass on her teaching and her training and things that she learns, to live up to Juno, who is, her patron deity. And I think that can't be discounted, that religiously it's a big thing to her, that she sort of feels like she's failed her patroness in a way because she hasn't had children, and that's sort of what you're supposed to do. I also think there's a big part of her that feels like having a kid would at least make something in her terrible, terrible marriage worth it. Which is a hard viewpoint. That's a hard thing to look at. I think there's another part of her that really doesn't want to have a child with Herennius. So she's feeling those two things simultaneously. Like, if I had a kid, it would at least be something good that I got out of this marriage. But at the same time, she just does not really want to have a family with him. She's stuck with him. She didn't pick him. And he's not a great guy. I can't imagine he'd be a very good, tender, loving father or anything. I mean, he might be a dutiful father to sons. I can't imagine he would care much one way or the other about any daughters he might have. So that would be hard for her too, I expect. We are going to get to see her taking on a slightly more, not maternal role, but a caregiver and teacher role in book 2. Without spoiling anything. It's not a child of her own yet, but it's a character you've seen before, someone we've met before, that she's going to be taking on sort of more that role too, in an attempt to fulfill her duties to Juno and her own desires to pass things on without having had a child yet. She doesn't want to have a child with Herennius. That doesn't mean there's no one in the world she might not want to have children with, and that's all I'm going to say on that front for now. Let's see, so next up, Kelly asked me what inspired the idea for fracture magic. This is a really cool thing. So the idea for Event and Magic has its seeds in a lot of conversations and a lot of games I used to play as I was a kid and a teenager growing up with a bunch of my friends here in Richmond. We started off sort of taking the system from Magic the Gathering with its 5 elements and like applying it to other things such as we felt like it. And then we sort of started adding more elements on. Like, it seems like there should be other things. And like, sorcery as an element, that's a thing you do. That doesn't seem like it's an element to us, but what can we replace it with? And we did a lot of messing about. And eventually we sort of got to 8. And Fracture was actually the last one that got sort of added to our list. It became the 9th. Because for a long, long time, we felt like there needed to be a 9th. And for a long, long time, we were, in fact, matching them up to like a D&D alignment square because we're nerds. And those have 9. But we couldn't figure out what the 9th one was supposed to be. We had, Earth, Air, Fire, Water, which are the regular ones. We had Spirit. We had Time. I think Time came along pretty late, too. We had Light and Shadow. And we talked about space. We talked about the void. We kicked around a lot of ideas. And the one I ended up liking the best was Fracture, because I started thinking about inimical elements. And we're going to hear a little more about that in the rest of the Oven Cycle series as well. Fire and water, earth and air are each other's opposites. Light and shadow were opposites. Time doesn't have an opposite. What is the opposite of time? It's no time? Like, that's not a thing that exists. And so thinking about what would be the opposite of spirit. And if spirit is that which binds, fracture is that which breaks. Spirit draws together, fracture drives apart. So this also ties into some thaumatological theories about like the intersection of magic and physics and a lot of fun things that my friends and I spent our whole lives talking about And I sort of took it and ran with it and applied it to this particular system that I was inventing and connecting to the Greco-Roman pantheon. And it seemed to work pretty well. If you're interested in fracture magic, book 2 is just gonna delight you utterly because there is so much fracture magic in book 2. Wow, is there so much of it. It does all kinds of crazy things, for good and ill, and you're gonna see. Jackie has asked me, how could I, a non-gaming teacher, use Genesis with high school students as a writing experience? I do have the core rulebook and some Genesis dice. Okay, so this is a different avenue of my nerdery besides writing. Genesis, in case you haven't seen some of my other posts on it, is a tabletop role-playing game. It's like Dungeons and Dragons. It's that style of game, but it's got its own dice system. It's got different character building components. And I love it. It's what the Star Wars system I played for 3 years is based on. We just started my group a new campaign for Genesis. It's a fantasy-based one. And I love the tools, and it's so great. So there's a bunch of different things you can do. Just walking your kids through character creation would be really fun because there are so many interesting things there. Thinking about like balancing characteristics, balancing a character who's really strong with a character who's really intellectual in a party. And you only have so many points to spend during character creation, so it becomes a lot about like, what do I want this character to be good at? And necessarily that's going to mean there's some things they aren't good at. And I think especially with high school students who will tend to oftentimes want to do the wish fulfillment thing of this character's good at everything I want them to be good at. And that's fine in some ways. Like I will champion the self-insert Mary Sue as a tool for like children feeling good about themselves all you want. But that's not good writing. If you want good writing, you have to think about flaws. And that actually, let's see here. I have my core rulebook right here. Product placement. I should get a commission or something. There are these tables, and this is actually something that my gentleman Noah brought up to me, and I thought it was a great idea, so I'm sharing it with you, but crediting him. There are these tables in the character creation section about, I gotta try to find them, about your character's strengths and fears and weaknesses. Let's see, where are they? Creating characters. Character motivation, that's what it is, on page 46. And you can random roll these. So it looks like these guys. You can roll your D100, and if you roll a 39, my desire is fame. Excellent. All right, great. So I'm going to then roll my fear. I'm going to roll, and I could actually be rolling dice right now, but I'd have to dig them out of my bag. 57. Humiliation. Oh, my fear is humiliation. Those two go together pretty well. A desire for fame and a fear of humiliation. That's most, drama kids. My strength is going to be 82. Wise. So I'm wise. And then my flaw, I'm going to go with 6. Anger. So a character with a temper. And so these charts give you a bunch of different things, and you can have your kids just random roll 4 times. And those 4 things are their character that they have to build off of. Simple as anything. That's quick and dirty character creation. You wouldn't even have to do the rest of the whole character chart. You could. I love them. I often use those when building characters, not just for games, but for writing. But if you want a really quick and dirty way to do it, those 4 tables would get you there. The other cool thing you can do is that the way that the Genesis system works is that when you roll to attempt something, you roll good dice and bad dice, and your good dice have both success and advantage, and your bad dice have failure and threat, and success and failure balance each other out, and advantage and threat balance each other out. So you can succeed with advantage, you can succeed with threat, you can fail with advantage, or you can fail with threat. And so you could, as a writing prompt, give your students a situation, like your character needs to climb this wall to get into the garden or the palace or whatever prompt you want to give them, and have them roll dice, and have each student roll a different set and see what outcome they get. And then make them think narratively about, especially if they fail advantageously, which my group was really good at, what does that mean? You fail at the thing you're trying to do, but what advantage do you get? What do you get that could still get you closer to your ultimate goal? That is where I think the narrative strength of the system really, really is in forcing people to think Not just about the direct line from A to B, but the twists and turns that can come along the way. There's also a lot of great sort of startup ideas in here about settings and adversary characters and things like that you could throw at them as writing prompts. But I think sort of random roll the character and learn how to fail advantageously or succeed with threat would be good things to throw at them for writing prompts. All right. Paul asks me, hi Paul, have I thought about what the world beyond the Middle Sea Basin is like in the Avonverse? The answer is yes, kind of. I have thought a lot more about what is still sort of in the Roman world because my head is so in that, and all my main characters are really Roman perspective. And so the shape of the world is as they know it. So I have thought some about, especially Northern Africa. I have actually thought a little about Sub-Saharan Africa and more on the western side than the eastern, actually, because if you sort of curl around the coast, like Mauritania could actually have trading access to Sub-Saharan communities. Thought a little bit, not a lot about those. I have thought a little bit, mostly to do with economics and trade, about sort of India and points east, but I have not done a lot of thinking about like what their political system is, what their magic might look like. And that's partially a lack of knowledge on my part about what those areas were like historically at this exact moment in time. I have a sort of general intro to world history level knowledge of it, but I haven't done more research. Someday I would like to. Someday I may keep going and flesh out the whole world. I have not really thought at all about what's going on in the Americas because the chances that my Roman characters are going to encounter them is 0. I thought a good bit about Northern Europe. So that's not Middle Sea Basin, but that's still Roman world eventually. I have given a little bit of thought to Britannia. I've given some thought to sort of Scandinavia. I've given some thought to what is for them Sarmatia, which is sort of the Eurasian stretch of land and what's going on there. And I've thought a good bit about Persia because that was Rome's main opponent on the global stage after a certain point. And that was what kept them from going further east, mostly. Persia sort of was the blockade for trade. Trade going one direction or the other had to go through them. There was not a lot of direct contact. There are stories about like one Roman legion that got super lost and ended up in China. That may or may not be true. But there was not really direct contact between the Middle Sea Basin and India and points east before. Gosh, I'm trying to think when we would finally break that down. I mean, it might be all the way to when we actually set up like the Silk Road and stuff like that. It's long. And so we have silks and things in Aven in Rome, but it comes by way of Persia. And so I had to think a little bit about what Persia's like and what that barrier is like for them. Trying to think what else. I've certainly thought a lot about Abbadosia. That is Middle Sea, but it's, not the Aventan world exactly. And a little bit about points south on that side, but not too much further, past like the Nubian area. I love history. I love thinking about these things. I love sort of kicking the dominoes and spinning them out. But I have limited myself more to Europe, Northern Africa, and the Middle East regions, simply because that is closer to what is likely to be relevant in future books. But hey, if people want to buy millions of my books and make me keep expanding the world and thinking about it, I would be really happy to have an excuse to buy lots of books on, the 1st century BCE in China. That'd be fun. That'd be fun to learn. I like learning. All right, let's see what else we've got here. From Instagram, Bess asked me 4 questions, so we're going to answer all of them. The first thing she asked was, did you experience post-publication depression? Apparently it's pretty common for debut authors. Man, I experienced pre-publication depression. I honestly sort of bummed myself out before the book even came out because I decided to avoid the problem lots of debut authors have about setting their expectations too high and then being disappointed by setting my expectations super low. And that kind of deflated a lot of my excitement about the book release, which I then felt guilty about, which then made me feel worse, and it was a whole emotional mess at the time. Since the book came out, yeah, the emotions have been all over the place. For me, it is more tied up in worrying about getting book 2 done and going back and forth on how competent I feel about that. I feel like book 1 is doing fine, sales-wise for what it is, for a hardcover fantasy by a mid-list debut author. It's doing fine. It's doing what it needs to. It's chugging along. My agent and editor happy, so that's great. I try not to worry too much about the sales numbers. I have no control over them. That's hard for me. I like to have control over things, but this is so far from, you know what, I did what I could. I wrote the book. That's the best I can do. And I need to focus on writing book 2. Where that is difficult and where I think like the effect of book 1 comes in is in having read too many reviews, which you're not supposed to do, but debut authors do anyway. We know we shouldn't, but we do. It's like eating too much Halloween candy. You know you're going to regret it, but you do it anyway. Having read so many of them, both from real people, real reviewers, and just, randos on Goodreads or Twitter, I have too many voices in my head, and it's been a challenge to clear them out, and I've really been trying to do that the last several weeks. Like, I don't care what other people want this book to be like or what they want it to represent or whose viewpoint they care most about. This needs to be my story. I need to remember what the core of it is for me and the story I want to tell. Other people can go write their own books if they want to tell a different story. So that's sort of been where like book 1 has been affecting my mood most recently. Second question from Bess. Which character was the most challenging for their parents as a child? This is really funny. Like, my gut instinct is wrong, because my gut instinct is to say Aula, because she's just the effervescent, irrepressible one, and she would have been, rambunctious, and she would have been high-spirited and things like that. But the actual answer is Latona, because Latona scared the bejesus out of her parents. Well, she didn't scare the bejesus out of them, because bejesus doesn't exist in my world. She terrified them, because her power was so strong so early. They knew that was going to be both a challenge for her to control and a political challenge, that she was always going to be a target for, as I say in From Unseen Fire, a target for unscrupulous men because of her power. And that terrified them. And so she was challenging for them just by her sheer existence. Not her behavior, but just her inner power scared them and was hard for them. And so they kind of copped out, and they shipped her off to be taken care of by Gaia Claudia, who adored her. But then she came back when she was only 11, after Gaia Claudia died, and the Vitellia mother, Vitsania, died not long after that, and Aulus all of a sudden had 3 girls on his hands, 2 teenagers, 1 child still at that point, and did not know what to do. And Latona was still the one that gave him the most fits. He knew what to do with his son. Gaius was fine. But Latona was still the one he didn't know what to do with. Of other characters, Sempronius was, I'm sure, an exceptionally well-behaved child. He had a lot of weight on his shoulders. He knew what he wanted to live up to. And he was keeping very careful control of himself because he was hiding his magic from his family. His sister eventually, he let her in on the secret, but he never told his parents that he could do magic. So from a very young age, he was very self-contained. And thus, at least outwardly, looked very obedient. And Vibia would have been should have been perfectly fine child. She's not given to outbursts. She has tight control over herself for a different reason. And so, because her fracture magic is something she feels like she has to guard herself for. So they were both sort of more guarded, reserved children. The Vitellii, on the whole, are a more gregarious and rambunctious crew. Alhina's an exception there because she was kept more sheltered as the baby and as the one growing up. She was still a child when Ocella was happening, and so she had to be kept more guarded in her youth. I'm trying to think if we expand then out sort of past my main characters and then side characters, Altronius Felix, I am sure, gave his parents no end of trouble because he's just that kind of kid. He's the kid who would be, up a tree the second you turn her back on him, or trying to bring home an ox as a pet, or, dressing up in priest clothing and trying to, sneak into a ceremony. Like, he is the real troublemaker. Altronius Felix is the troublemaker, absolutely, of the next tier out of secondary characters. Bess also asks, have I sorted my cast into Hogwarts houses? Bess, have we met? Come on now, girl. Of course I've sorted them into Hogwarts houses. Duh. I compulsively do this to all characters ever. Yes, absolutely. So the cast is, the main characters are dominated by Slytherins because, hi, I'm Slytherin. Sempronius and Vivia absolutely are both Slytherins. They are calculating, they are ruthless, they are Slytherins with a conscience, they intend good things, but they are absolutely cutthroat about getting what they want. In the Vitelii, we've got the two eldest, Gaius and Aula, are both Hufflepuffs. Aula looks like a Gryffindor, I'll grant you that. And I bet the hat would have a little bit of a moment with her trying to figure out if she should be in Gryffindor or in Hufflepuff. But for all that she is brash, and for all that she is bubbly and effervescent, her true courage doesn't run quite to the Gryffindor strain. She is more Hufflepuff loyal, and everything she does is for her family. That is absolutely her focus in life. And she would have given all for her husband and her children in that family. She will do anything for her daughter Lucia. Right now she's focusing all her effort on getting her father and her brother into higher station. So she has got that tenacity too. She's got the Hufflepuff drive and dig. She will honey badger her way into things. Gaius as well, also a Hufflepuff. He's very dutiful. He is also very loyal. He is more of the straight and narrow kind of Hufflepuff. He's probably a little bit of a Cedric Diggory. He wants to do what's right. He wants to do his duty. He wants to be known as someone who does his duty and who can be counted upon. I did have a conversation with myself the other day where a scene I've written for book 2 made me think he's got a little bit more of a Slytherin streak in him than I thought he did at first, though. He encounters a situation in book 2, and, God's knows if this is going to end up in the final draft or not, but at least as it's written right now, he has to make a choice, and he makes the Slytherin choice. He makes the self-preservation choice at someone else's expense. And it is a calculation, and in that calculation, it's the correct decision. It is not the most compassionate decision. It is almost math. It's almost a mathematic decision that he makes, but it's definitely preserving the self over somebody else. So I still think he comes down the Hufflepuff side of things, but I have been interested to find out as I've continued to write him that he might have a bit of a Slytherin streak. Like his younger sister, Latona is a Slytherin. And I'm not sure she knows it yet. I think she probably thinks of herself more as a Ravenclaw. But the story of book 1, and especially the story of book 2, is sort of her discovering ambition and deciding she wants to take up a public place in the world because she can. She knows she'd be good at it, and it's pissing her off increasingly that she's not being allowed to. She has got Slytherin drive, and she is developing more Slytherin ruthlessness. It's a strange place because she is a Slytherin who she's been abused, and she's made herself small. And that's a weird place to be for any human being, but it cuts against the grain of a Slytherin's natural instincts. I think had her life not taken a hard right turn, had Gaia Claudia lived, and had she grown up in the Temple of Juno as she was supposed to, it would be far more apparent. She would have been gunning for religious and political prominence much, much earlier in life. But circumstances intervened and sort of squashed her, and she's only now rediscovering them. Let's see. And then Baby Alhina. Baby Alhina is a Ravenclaw. Baby Alhina is absolutely a Ravenclaw. She is more reserved. She loves to read. She loves research. That is going to become a more important part of her character as the story goes on. It will end up sort of defining a little bit her life goals as they shape out. But she also has the ability to look at life in a slightly different way, because I think her time magic gives her that, is she has a different perspective on the world than most people do. So in a sort of Luna Lovegood way. She's not as airy-fairy as Luna Lovegood, but she's got that slightly tilted view on reality that a lot of Ravenclaws have. And this is a corresponding question from Bess asking if the elements correspond to houses generally. The quiz said I'd be air. Was that made more likely because I'm a Ravenclaw? Is there overlap? Answer is there overlap? Probably. I didn't consciously map that out because I really don't like mapping the Hogwarts houses to elements because it seems very limiting to me, and I am a Slytherin who is not a water personality at all. I'm in fact terrified of open water. It's like a thing I have nightmares about. And so whenever I take quizzes, they always want to make me a Gryffindor because like they'll be like, do you like, fire, water, air, earth things? And I like fire best out of those options. And it's like, no, that's not, there's more to personality than that. So I'm sure for some people there are those overlaps. But for me, no, there is not a one-to-one correlation of any kind. Because there's 9 elements and only 4 houses, for one thing, and I could not begin to try and sort the other ones accordingly. It is also, I think so expansively about how each of the elements works, and that they are essentially value neutral. They're not good or evil, and that's true for the Hogwarts houses too, but they also manifest in such different ways. Air can be the gentle breeze. Air can be stagnant. Air can be a gust, a hurricane. There's just so many different layers to each element as I see them that they don't always map neatly onto the Hogwarts houses. So if they line up for you, awesome. If they don't, awesome too. Everything's awesome. Everybody's awesome. All right. Tina asks me what snack I must have when writing. I'm trying not to snack all that much as I'm trying to lose some weight. So I'm more likely to have a drink of some kind in my hand, which if it is daytime is going to be soda of some sort. Soda is my biggest vice, really. I drink a lot of it. I like Coke Zero. I like Diet Dr. Pepper. If it is the nighttime, then I am more likely to be drinking wine or cider, preferably from Bold Rock Cidery. Here's another product placement that someone should give me money for someday. It's my favorite cidery. I love them so much. Alrighty. So, if I am going to snack, it's going to be probably Goldfish crackers are my favorite snack in the world. I could eat vast quantities of them. I am eating fewer of them because I discovered just how badly I was lying to myself about what constituted a serving size. I knew I was lying to myself. I didn't know I was lying to myself that badly. Like, oh, this giant bowl is probably 2 servings, right? No, it's like 6. But that is my absolute favorite snack of all time is Goldfish crackers. All right. Let's see, I think I've got one more on Instagram. Yes, one more on Instagram. Catherine K, hi Kay, asked, other than fantasy, what's your favorite genre to read or write? And they're different. Writing, other than fantasy, is sci-fi. I'm working on a couple of those projects. Reading is historical romance. I love a historical romance novel so much. And you might say, well, Cass, why don't you try writing historical romances? And the answer is, I'm too much of a historian to write historical romances. I have tried, and the history gets in my way and bogs me down, and I can't follow the formula that those books are formulaic, and that's fine. That's why they're so much fun, because that, certain things that the pace is gonna be like this. There'll be exciting incidents at these points. And I get so bogged down in the actual history of Regency England that it does not make a good story. But I love reading them. I devour them. Julia Quinn's my favorite. Lisa Kleypas, Suzanne Enoch, Sarah MacLean. Those are top of my list for Regency romances. Let's see. I think I had a couple on Twitter as well. Yes, I did. Okay. Mike asked me, you're on a disabled ship in space and you're running out of oxygen. You can call in either Han Solo or Jean-Luc Picard. What do you do? My gut instinct was to call Han Solo because he'd like MacGyver his way out of it, except I think actually it would be Chewbacca who would be able to do that to restore our ability to breathe, and so I'm not sure Han would actually be able to solve the problem fast enough. So I would call in Jean-Luc Picard because he can do just about anything, and he would make the most of everyone on my crew. He would know who to put where to figure out the whole situation, and he has got a brilliant mind himself. He is a scientist as well as a captain, and so I think he would make the most of the available resources. So I would call in Jean-Luc Picard. Let's see. Carrie-Anne has asked me, what's my favorite writing advice? The most useful writing advice I've ever gotten is but then. And this is essentially when you summarize your scenes, when you're going through your chapters, making sure that every chapter or every major scene point can be summarized with a but then statement, because that ensures that you are not just having characters wander around talking to each other, which I am sometimes guilty of. But then make sure things are still happening, that the plot is moving forward. And it also helps to raise the stakes. Patricia got up in the morning and she brushed her teeth and she had breakfast. And then there was a knock at the door. That is different from Patricia got up in the morning and she brushed her teeth and she had breakfast, but then there was a knock at the door, because all of a sudden the third thing that happens is unexpected. It heightens the tension. That's a very simplistic rendering, but that also helps make sure there's a change or reversal in every scene, which helps propel the story on. So that's my favorite. That's my most useful writing advice that I've ever gotten. And finally, from Possum at Possum, Pachem, I suppose if we're going with actual Latin pronunciation here, on Twitter. I have no idea who you are, which is true. How would you describe yourself in 20 words or less? Awesome. I can do this. So let's see. I am a Slytherin, Targaryen, ENFP, Leonine, Bajoran, Rebel Alliance, writer, who gets through life on sheer force of personality. Ha! 20 exactly! That was awesome. Okay. Yes, I used a lot of, geek shorthand to explain who I am, but that pretty much sums me up. So that's me, and that was a great question to end on. I think I got everyone from the various channels that I posted the AMA to. So I hope you enjoyed the answers, and we'll do this again sometime. In the future, it will probably be Patreon exclusive, or at least often be Patreon exclusive. And the Patreon supporters are going to get this video first, and it'll be put up to Facebook and other channels later. So if you want to make sure that you are always able to both ask me questions and see the answers, then hit up patreon.com/CassRMorris and join up. You can join up for as little as $1 a month. That is really honestly less than a movie ticket and a soda. That's way less than a movie ticket and a soda these days for a whole year of bonkers content. So thank you so much, and happy fall! It's fall now. Happy fall. Okay.